Welcome back. I want to congratulate you on making it through the quarter this far. This is your last project. It's been a crazy quarter, and I want to thank you for sticking it out with me. Anyway, your last project should be fun, I hope, especially if you drink coffee. Coffee drippers, that's what we're going to make. So what I have to show you for a finished sample is actually wheel thrown, but we'll talk about its anatomy and we'll look at the commercial one. Because when you look at commercially made products, one thing you know is it's already been through all the R&D, the research and development. That means they've tested styles, little nuances that help it function. For example, this one has no handle, which means that after I've poured the coffee in, it's hot, it's hard to pick up. So putting a handle on your coffee dripper is pretty wise, I think, unless you want to burn yourself. The other thing is, this coffee dripper was made all in one piece. You will be assembling lots of parts to get your coffee dripper. Let's look at the commercial one to find out how that might look. It's hard for you to see, I know, in this light, but inside there are ridges, and they're raised ridges. And what they do is they allow the cone, the filter, to sit up a little off of the wall, and it allows air to travel down, and it helps draw the water down. I have seen coffee drippers where these are not raised reliefs, but carved in, so they're more like depressions, they're concave. You can try whatever you want. You can lay coils down and get the raised effect, or you can carve ditches or a concave kind of tunnel and figure out if that works, whatever you like. The other thing that we want to look at is the underside, and this is very important. Basically what we have are two flanges that hang down. So one flange is inside and it's got a fairly good height. It's a good 1/4 inch. So it's about a 1/4 inch long or tall, however you want to say it. And that allows what drips out to hit that wall and go straight down. Without that inner flange, your fluid would travel all the way to the outside and drip down outside of the mug. The other thing is, these are very straight edges. They're sharp edges. They're not rounded. Fluid will cling to something rounded and travel. You don't want that. You want the sharp edge so that your fluid comes down to that edge and sort of breaks and falls off like a waterfall. This has one hole. I like filters that have 2 or 3. Why not, right? What else can we say about, oh, so this outer flange is missing a section. It's because if you have a coffee mug where the handle comes up, this can sit on there and not be interrupted by the handle. Another thing to consider. And here's another view. This is the wheel thrown one, and you can see a bit better my 2 flanges. Here are my templates. What I ended up with was something a little smaller. It's curved on the top, and it's also curved on the bottom. And that way, as this shape becomes a form and sort of bends so that the edges meet, it changes the height of each of these. As this curves around, these come up. That's why the curve is important. So you can test it by putting it on the table like that, and you can see the gap underneath. And then what if we just curved it and tilted it back so that these edges were straight up and down? When you look at it that way, all of a sudden the top is fairly straight. The other part is the bottom. So this one is about 4.5 inches, and that's fine. If I took my coffee cup and put it down, that hangs over pretty well. Keep in mind your clay will shrink when it dries, and each time it's fired, it will shrink to a final amount of 8 to 10%. That's how much your form will shrink. So I have about a 4.5 inch base. So I have all of our parts. I have enough parts here for 2. I suggest you do the same, because the first time you put it together, it could be a little awkward, or you'll do a couple steps out of order, and you can try it again on the second one. All right, to get started, let's start with our walls. So these are my forms, and before dropping them over here to rest up, I went ahead and did 2 bevel cuts. The bevel cuts are important because when your pieces come together, they're going to overlap here, and they're going to do the same on this side. Bevel cut the outside, flip it, bevel cut the opposite side on the inside. So these are ready to put together. I have to score them. So I'm going to do that. You can score when you bevel cut, and then you can drape it. That way you don't have to carefully score at this point. And you can set them down on the table and get your shapes to be more symmetrical. All right, so we want a little vinegar. And I'm going to start assembling upside down because I have an angle that's easier to see when I'm working. And I want to layer the bevel. Gently press that together. Get the other side. You can put your finger inside and give it a compression with a ruler or whatever you might have. This is a good time to look at the symmetrical oval shape that's at the bottom inside, and you can press your clay and push and shove however you feel you need. Open it up, push it in to get what you're looking for. All right. So there is our top. You can see by the line, I may be trimming off a little on these ends if I don't want it to look like a boat. There's nothing wrong with it looking like a boat. I might even exaggerate that if I wanted to, but we'll see. Right now, I've got higher ends, and that's okay. It gives me something to work with later. Now, you will want to add a coil at each of these seams to reinforce that. I'll do that right now. All right, so now that we have our coils added to these side seams, I can put it aside and I can work on the base. All right, so I found my center by simply measuring half of this diameter, and I did it from 2 different directions, so the intersection is where my center is. So I have my center, and I'm going to take my compass tool, and I can put one needle right at center, and I can just spin it gently that marks without cutting through where my inner flange will be. And I want to make sure it looks like it's pretty well centered, and I think that's close enough. So once I know where that's going to be, I can go ahead and cut 3 holes for the drain. I start with the center one, so cut that one. And I have this nifty little tool, but your needle tool will do a similar job. You just poke it through, and my needle tool is tapered a little bit, so it helps ease it in. My hands are on the back. And twist it like you're drilling through the clay. And when you do that, it'll open it up. This, however, does a nice clean cutout job. And removes the plug. That's my top. That's what we're going to see when we're looking down inside the cone filter. So I want to make sure that these holes are cleaned up while I can still get to them. So let's score the edge of our base. And before we put the base on, there's going to be another thing we need to do. One of the things you notice when you look at coffee drippers that are commercially made is that they actually taper. This wall of the base tapers sort of this way. It's not totally flat. So I want to somehow drop this area lower than the outer edge. And to do that, what I'm going to do is place it, find this. This might work by chance. Anything that's going to give you a circumference smaller than your piece. So I've got it supported, and I want to drop this so that it does that. So I'm gently pushing around those holes, and I'm watching the spaces of clay between the holes so they don't start splitting under stress. I'm just coercing, not forcing. A little vinegar helps stretch it. It doesn't look like much, but with gravity, that little bit of disc concave to your base will help the water drool this way, kind of like drool towards the holes and down into the coffee. Now that we have the outside edge scored and we've got it concave, I want to quickly score. I'm just going to use this because it's a small area. I need to score where my interior flange will be. And now I can put that aside. My interior flange is a little bit firm. I let them get a little bit too dry, but that's all right. I can spray it with some vinegar, and I can just gently, as I lift, I can just stretch it and soften it again a little bit. Start getting it to curve. So that it's got some flexibility. I can form it to a circle, score, and I'm going to spray either one of the two, doesn't really matter. Put this down and just start pressing it gently without collapsing that concave work you did. You want to push this down and join the two. And where they come together, you can slice them in a 45-degree angle. And then bring them together. So let's see how that was. Brought it together. Clean up the inside. Clean up the outside, seal it, compress that join. Smooth it. And just double check. I do want to repeat that you need a nice sharp edge here on the inside wall so that the fluid hits that sharp edge and drops straight down into the cup. Now it's time to get the outer flange on there. This will not be attached to the bottom like this was. It's going to be attached on the side wall, which means it's the back side of our flange that we scored. And that's easy enough, but before we do that, I want to go ahead and smooth the edge, both edges, with the sponge. Make them nice and clean right now. It's easier to do it now than later. So I'm going to line it up, flush, the two edges flush, and I'm going to press as I roll. Then do what we did before. Do a bevel cut. These two will come together. Maybe need a little more trimming, but a little more trimming on that one. Just sort of roll and compress. Once you have that secured, you can go back and open up if you need to, or make it more symmetrical, the flange. Don't have it go out. You want it to taper in slightly or straight down. And that's where they met. A little bit of vinegar, a little compression, smoothing. And maybe that's where I do a cutout and remove that if I wanted a space for a handle. But I don't know, I'm not inclined to do that. Clean it up. And all I have to do is clean up that ridge. Time to put the two halves together. Okay. Carefully line it up. Try and compress it down gently. Let's line it up. Gently press it down. This stage is easier, by the way, when your underside is more firm and can take the abuse, because you will be pressing and moving and You don't want to dent or break your walls that hang down off the base. So you add a coil inside, you add a coil on the outside. Once you're sure, looking from the side, it's centered and where you want it to be. I'll do that right now. Got a coil on the inside and I've got a coil on the outside, and we should be set. I just need the handle, and I need to trim my top, and I need to then clean up the edges, and we'll see what we have. So let me do the handle. First, I'm going to decide how long I need it. If that's going to be too big, probably is. Cut a little off. And then what's the angle? Do I want it to go up? If I had that, that's not a bad size, so I think we'll go with that. Let me just cut. I can draw my lines using the top of lining it up with the top edge of the walls. Cut that. And then I can attach. Here it is. I had a little fun with the handle. Because I have this wonderful relief texture that's very vine-like and flowery, I went ahead and made a handle that has a little extra whoop-de-doop in it. You can do whatever you want, as long as it feels good to use. So what I need to do now is I'm going to look at it in profile, and I want to make sure that the top is what I want, and that everything's lined up. I think because I've got the handle going all wonky, I want to do something wonky with my rim. So let's just go for it. Not going too deep. I want to be sure you still have something a coffee filter can brace against when it's full of water. A little flower-like. And I will smooth my cut edges, clean up all of the edges all around the whole thing, and let it dry. And hope it works. I think I've got all the parts on here: the handle, the walls, the base, interior flange, exterior flange, holes. It's very easy to be able to put the paper together and make sure it's going to be the size you want. That's it. That is your last project to make. I hope you enjoyed the quarter. There's a little bit more left, so don't go away. Just keep checking Canvas for any announcements or quizzes I might give you. All right, have fun with the coffee dripper.